Chapter 51 The Return of Guangling Douluo. The Battle Between the Angel and the Pope. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The atmosphere in the Pope's palace suddenly became a little weird, and Su Chen also noticed some vague eyes looking at him. Here we go again. Are you tired every day? Ju Douluo next to him opened his eyes, muttered in a low voice, stood in front of Su Chen, and blocked all kinds of eyes for him. Does this happen every day? Su Chen raised his eyebrows and asked. It seems that he is still going for Bibi Dong, but he just happened to catch up today. Yes, this is already a reserved program, but it's okay. When the old man Guang Ling was still there, the situation was much more dangerous than it is now. These people can't make any waves. Ju Douluo shrugged his shoulders with an indifferent expression. Don't feel psychological pressure, just treat it as listening to a dog barking. He didn't restrain his voice when he said this, and Su Chen felt several unfriendly eyes looking at him in an instant. You've got a good map cannon. The young man shook his head with a bit of a laugh and tears, his eyes looked at the beautiful figure on the high and distant seat, his brows slightly wrinkled. Sure enough, using some privileges for himself still brought some trouble to Bibi Dong. After all, the position of the Pope is not stable, and there are people watching everywhere. Bibi Dong did these things without any intention of covering up, and it is normal for people to catch her pigtail, but as Yu Guan said, without a leader of sufficient weight, these things will not have any effect except making people upset. Then why today? It is the right of His Majesty the Pope to mobilize healing soul masters, and our first genius is indeed seriously injured. Just when Su Chen was still thinking, a chuckle that he was very familiar with suddenly sounded at the door of the hall, attracting everyone's attention. That is. Su Chen raised his head and looked at the familiar grey-robed figure, and the expression on his face suddenly became a little solemn. So that's it, it turns out that they are all paving the way for today, right? If this person comes back, then everything will make sense. Fuck, how can this old thing come back? Ju Douluo suddenly widened his eyes, gnashed his teeth, and looked at the handsome one-eyed boy with hatred. Attacking the Pope, attacking the genius of the Spirit Hall, which crime is not enough for him to die? Are the people in the Elder Hall crazy? Yes, the one standing at the door was Guangling Douluo, who was taken away that day. At this moment, he had long lost the ferocious hatred of that day. Like a graceful young man in the world, as if he noticed Su Chen's sight, he nodded slightly to the boy, like a kind elder, and there was no trace of the murderous look that day. The group of people who were just announcing Bibi Dong turned around and bowed, completely ignoring the cold look of His Holiness the Pope. Looking around, there were more than half of them. Alas, Elder Yueguan is wrong. I was just impulsive. His Holiness the Pope and the High Priest are very broad-minded and naturally forgave my small mistakes. Seemingly very satisfied with the result, Guangling Douluo smiled and nodded, not caring about Ju Douluo's undisguised scolding, but looking at the cold and beautiful figure on the Gaoyuan seat. Besides, I was able to return here thanks to His Holiness the Pope. He still had the same expression, but the boy could see obvious pride from his upturned mouth. Su Chen frowned and looked at Bibi Dong, who didn't say a word, and his heart suddenly understood. It seems that His Holiness the Pope had some kind of deal with the six-winged angel lineage. The content is unknown for the time being, but it should be that Bibi Dong's weakness was grasped. Otherwise how could Guangling, who committed a serious crime, have a chance to come back to the stage? There is no doubt that the appearance of Guangling is a huge blow to the power of the Pope, and it also shows these high-level officials who is the real controller of the Spirit Hall. Su Chen now understands why His Holiness the Pope has been so tired these days and remained silent in the face of these people's criticism. However, the young man looked at the triumphant Guangling Douluo and shook his head. The Angel clan was one step behind this time, and they actually chose to send this idiot back, being so arrogant in the Pope's palace. Do you really think Bibi Dong has no temper? Sure enough, as soon as the voice fell, the cold figure slowly raised her head, and her wine-red eyes swept around with a fierce look. Kazizi. The purple-black energy arc twisted like lightning, surrounding the figure, and a repressive and terrifying aura spread out. The high-ranking officials in the front were horrified and began to retreat. They couldn't help but shouting in panic, "Calm down, Your Holiness. Your Holiness, don't be anxious, don't be anxious." Guangling priest, hey, please say less. Guangling priest. The people who were just flattering began to persuade him, even with a hint of accusation, which made Guangling Douluo's proud expression instantly freeze on his face, when the noble and cold figure even slowly stood up, and his power increased instead of decreasing. He suddenly panicked. After all, he spoke first. If that woman really attacked him, wouldn't he fight back? If he fought back, it would be another attack on the Pope. If this crime happened again, the priest hall and the elder hall would not be able to cover it. That was not the face of the Pope, but the face of the person behind him. If I don't fight back, wouldn't I lose all my face? Damn crazy woman. Guangling Douluo was so angry that he was shaking all over and his face was twitching. But when he thought about the consequences, he still suppressed his anger and gritted his teeth and bent down. Your Majesty, I was wrong. But before he finished speaking, the power of the riot disappeared in an instant. In the entire vast hall, only the echoing voice of Light Ling Douluo and the lonely figure standing in the middle, bending down and saluting. For a moment, it felt like a cold wind was blowing, and you could hear a needle drop. Su Chen almost laughed out loud while watching. She is worthy of being the woman who can take charge of the Spirit Empire in the future. Although she is still a little immature now, her powerful methods are already beginning to show signs. This is a simple and crude conspiracy. Seraph Angel declared to these high-level officials the true controller of Wuhuan Palace by forcibly recovering Light Feather Douluo, and Bibi Dong also told everyone in this way that she was indispensable to Wuhuan Palace. So what if you are the messenger of the Seraphim? As long as I am in the position of Pope, you will always be under me. There is no doubt that this kind of behavior not only found no fault, but also frustrated Light Ling Douluo's energy to the maximum extent and minimized her losses, and Su Chen can be sure that the high priest will definitely let Guangling go back and keep a low profile. After all, as long as the Light Ling Douluo stands in the Pope's palace, it is the best display. His behavior was purely out of his own revenge. As a result, Bibi Dong keenly seized the opportunity, greatly reducing the effectiveness of this demonstration. If this matter is reported back, it is estimated that the enshrinement hall will not let him off easily. Light Ling Douluo's face turned green and white. No matter how stupid he was, he now understood that he had done something bad. He was about to curse angrily, but he saw the mockery in Bibi Dong's eyes. This woman is tempting herself to make another mistake. He suddenly woke up in his heart and took a deep breath. Instead of standing up, he bent even lower. His Majesty the Pope, Guangling realizes his mistake. This person is not completely stupid. A trace of regret flashed in her beautiful burgundy eyes, and a faint smile appeared on Bibi Dong's pretty face. Then go back. If you know your mistakes and can correct them, there is no greater good. Chapter 52, One's own people betrayed one's own people. Guangling's hidden killer MO. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Sure kill. Su Chen couldn't help but applaud Bibi Dong. Ha ha ha, the old dog is going to die of anger. Ghost Douluo covered his mouth and laughed with gloating, but no one cared this time. Several high-level officials who were already neutral looked at the peerless figure on the high and distant throne, and then looked at Guangling Douluo, who could hardly maintain his expression, with their eyes flickering. Even though the six-winged angel lineage is quite powerful, the Pope has also shown her own fangs at this moment. Everyone remembered that the Pope has surpassed Tang Hao and become the youngest titled Douluo on the continent. In addition, that everyone's eyes turned slightly and were placed on the white-haired boy at the back. This is also an extremely evil existence. The first ring of 1,000 years is even more unprecedented in ancient and modern times. Unprecedented, and I am afraid that there will be no one to come after. Now of course, the angel lineage is powerful, but what about 10 years later, 20 years later? Waiting for the two to grow up completely, everything is still unknown. Your Highness, feeling the flickering eyes around him, Guangling Douluo suddenly became anxious. He was able to come back safely. The purpose was to deter threats and put the high-level officials of the Pope's palace in a state of confrontation. If most of them turned to Bibi Dong, how should he explain to the one in the worship hall? The single eye flashed rapidly, and Guangling Douluo simply bowed again directly, attracting all the attention. Your Highness, the adult asked me to tell you that Su Chen is in good health. Very good. Don't go to him easily next time. After all, he has a short lifespan, and every action must be approved by the great worshipper. As soon as these words came out, the Pope's palace fell into a brief silence. After a moment, there was an uproar. For a moment, all the eyes in the field looked at the three people with surprise and disbelief. The Pope suddenly became cold, Guangling Douluo slowly straightened his back, and Su Chen looked confused. What the hell? The deal that Bibi Dong made with the angel lineage was to ask a healing title Douluo who could not easily take action to heal herself. Didn't you go to find him? Ju Douluo patted his forehead helplessly, looking at Su Chen with a bitter smile. You kid is really sometimes I wonder if you have given the Pope some kind of magic potion. No, I just ran out of mental strength. Su Chen himself was also quite confused. How miserable did he look at that time to make Bibi Dong want to ask a healing title Douluo, and even let Guangling come back for this. Brother, I forgot to tell you that the beautiful human woman up there came every night when you were unconscious. In order to avoid being exposed, I covered it up for you for several days. In his mind, the voice of Tianmeng Ice Silkworm sounded. In the spiritual world, in Konoha village, the chubby silkworm body was lying on the fire's shadow rock, basking in the sun comfortably. He said a little embarrassedly while peeking at the screen to watch the fun. She is too strong. I just recovered. At first, I didn't know whether it was a friend or an enemy, so I suppressed your mental fluctuations to the lowest level. Later, she asked someone to save you, and I released the suppression. Fuck, Su Chen made the same forehead-covering action as Yu Guan. With Tianmeng's strength, it is very easy to cover up the mental fluctuations. Even the title Douluo can't see the clues, so, in Bibi Dong's opinion, she should have suddenly become near death, and there was no reason. In a hurry, she went directly to find the most authoritative person in the spirit hall and reached this deal. So, this is a case of one's own people accidentally pitting one's own people. Brother, did I do something wrong? As if she had noticed that Su Chen was in a bad mood, Tianmeng asked carefully. No, you did a good job. This is a pure misunderstanding. Su Chen shook his head, comforted Tianmeng, and then pinched his chin to think about countermeasures. This matter certainly cannot be blamed on Tianmeng. After fully activating the 3 Magatama Sharingan, he consumed too much energy. Tianmeng was also affected because he had become his soul ring, and his mental state was also very depressed. It neither knew the 2 Douluo of Xueer nor had ever been to the human world. In the face of this situation, using this method to protect itself is the safest way. No other intelligent creature can do better than it, and Bibi had asked someone to see her and pronounced her safe, but in the blink of an eye, she fell into a near-death state. The first thing she thought of was definitely a more professional existence than Soul Saint and Soul Douluo, so, a perfect misunderstanding was formed. Wait, this might be an opportunity. Su Chen thought of something, his black eyes lit up, and he looked at the figure on the high and distant seat. The specific situation depends on the response of His Holiness the Pope and the extent to which Guangling will do it. Damn it. Bibi Dong clenched her fists in her sleeves, her veins exposed, her sharp nails pierced deep into her flesh, and a hint of cold murderous intent flashed across her beautiful wine-red eyes as she looked at Guangling Douluo. She never wanted to let others know about this kind of thing, especially Su Chen. Su Chen is the future of the spirit hall. Does Guangling have any objection to my doing this? There was murderous intent in her heart, but after experiencing the previous things, Bibi Dong had grown a lot. At this moment, her cold and beautiful face still had a faint expression, and there was no fluctuation. Yes, it seems that there is nothing wrong. Everyone was a little surprised, but genius like Su Chen would be carefully cultivated in any force. Even if the healing title Douluo takes action less and less, it would be worthwhile to use him. Even if His Holiness the Pope was just following the normal procedure, he would have to take action. It is better to say that she was willing to put aside disputes and hatred to ask the great worshipper to save the future of the spirit hall. This behavior is more admirable. Yes, I also think that His Holiness the Pope is very righteous and is willing to pay so much for the future of my spirit hall. Guangling Douluo showed a smile of success at this moment. He sincerely stretched out his hands and bowed. With His Holiness the Pope, the spirit hall will surely prosper and dominate the world. No one responded. Everyone with a discerning eye could see that Guangling Douluo was a little bit upset at the moment. What do you want to say? Bibi Dong frowned and said coldly, she always had a bad premonition. Ha 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 ha, I'm just feeling emotional. His Holiness the Pope cares about Spirit Hall so selflessly. It's a blessing for our Spirit Hall. Guangling Douluo stood up slowly, looking at Bibi Dong's obviously unstable breathing. A hint of satisfaction flashed across his single eye. Then may I ask, what did His Holiness the Pope use the 9.76 million gold soul coins for this genius? Chapter 53, Su Chen stood up in response to Bibi Dong's disappointment. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As Ling Douluo's question came out, the hall fell into silence. After a moment, someone hesitated and said, Sir, if the more than 9 million gold soul coins are actually spent on cultivating talents, there should be no problem, right? Immediately afterwards, many people echoed. Yes, yes, the elite project costs hundreds of thousands of dollars every day. The Pope must have a deep meaning in doing this. Isn't the Guangling worship a little fussy? Listening to the retorts around him, Ju Douluo clapped his hands excitedly, lowered his head and said to Su Chen behind him, Look, there are many people with brains. Really? Su Chen frowned. More than 9 million gold soul coins may not be a lot, but a small amount is definitely a lot, and once this kind of thing is brought to the surface, it will definitely not be so simple. So many people echoed it, and it was a bit weird to force an understatement. He saw one or two of them saluting when Ling Douluo came in. Moreover, rather than defending Bibi Dong, it is more like adding fuel to the fire and pushing this matter into a more serious direction, as expected. Ling Douluo listened to these words with a smile on his face and waved his hands repeatedly. No, 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 of course I have no intention of questioning His Majesty's decision. As long as His Majesty the Pope is willing, let alone more than 9 million, it will be 10 million. 100 million, as long as it is for Wuhuan Palace, then we will fully cooperate. It's just that. He changed the topic and his expression became serious. As far as I know, Your Majesty the Pope, you did not spend the money to buy soul bones and elixirs, nor did you do any targeted training. Instead, you hired a large number of craftsmen and purchased expensive protective metals at sky-high prices. And countless custom supplies. So. Ling Douluo narrowed his one eye and looked at the beautiful silhouette on the high seat. I would like to ask Your Majesty the Pope to clarify my doubts. What kind of training does our number one genius need to use these things? Craftsmen, metal, supplies. Everyone looked at each other in shock when they heard this. These sounds indeed have nothing to do with cultivation, but a bit like wanting to be a blacksmith. What do you mean? The Pope wants to support the first genius to learn blacksmithing. Isn't that just giving up the basics and chasing the weak? And what a waste, this is more than 9 million gold soul coins, you can even buy a good soul bone. If the Pope really used the money to purchase cultivation materials privately, they wouldn't say anything even if they felt uncomfortable. After all, Su Chen was indeed worth the price, but if they come to learn something that is not on the stage, they will have objections. You must be confused about this. Seeing everyone's reaction, Ling Douluo nodded with satisfaction. He raised his hand and lowered it to signal silence. I have another little tidbit. That is, our number one genius has been as fond of research as the master of martial arts theory since he was a child. He glanced at Bibi Dong, who had been silent since the beginning, with a ferocious smile on his lips. Like a poisonous snake that had been gathering momentum for a long time, it finally opened its fangs. Now that I think about it, these materials seem to be enough to build a very high-end experimental site. Boom. As if a spark was dropped into a table of boiling oil, as soon as these words were spoken, the hall immediately exploded. The senior officials whispered and looked at Ling Douluo with surprise and uncertainty, as well as Bibi Dong, who was exuding an icy chill but didn't say a word in reply. If what he said is true, then this matter is really intriguing. Humph, confused, simply confused. An old man threw up his sleeves angrily and walked away. When he passed by Su Chen, he glared at him fiercely. No one stopped. This is an old man who has served 3 generations of popes. He is not very powerful, but his contribution to Wuhuan Palace is huge, so he usually has a high prestige. Although he is not an elder, his status is not below him. He was one of those who were friendly to Bibi Dong, but his disappointment in Bibi Dong could also be seen from the regretful look in his eyes when he left. The Pope's red lips parted slightly, as if he wanted to stop him, but in the end he sighed secretly and stopped. Some of the neutral senior officials looked at Bibi Dong with disappointment and regret. If the money used to let Su Chen learn blacksmithing was a waste of golden soul coins, then letting him study such ethereal things was a pure crime. Who in the martial arts world doesn't know the name of Master Yu Xiaojiang? But as the most authoritative expert in the martial arts world, isn't he also half a laughing stock? In the martial arts world, strength is still respected after all. Wasting money is a small matter, but burying genius is a big deal. What's more, Su Chen is only a 6-year-old child. Wouldn't it be ridiculous to expect him to be able to study something? And doing such ridiculous things because of selfishness also reflects from the side that the Pope himself has a big problem. This is the fundamental reason for their disappointment. They can tolerate the Pope's preference for Su Chen, not participating in elite programs, not going to the academy, and even attending the Pope's palace at such a young age. But it is absolutely unacceptable to use the resources of Wuhuan Palace to provide him with such ridiculous things. His Majesty the Pope, you have gone too far this time. An old man shook his head and sighed, his disappointment palpable. Sure enough, she is a young girl who acts on her own initiative and only relies on her preferences. How can she be worthy of the Pope? I think it's better to let the old Pope come back. That's right, that's right. She is so unwise to favor a child today. Isn't it going to cause greater disasters in the future? Many old men who usually only participate in discussions and not in debates stood up and mercilessly accused the beautiful figure on the high and distant throne. Bibi Dong said nothing, just stood there, silently bearing these accusations. She could scold Guangling Douluo and fight with the 6-winged angels, but she couldn't say anything to these old men who only had the spirit hall in their hearts. Just bear it and it will pass. Anyway, Qian Daolu will not let her step down, right? It's not the first time. Bibi Dong smiled self-deprecatingly and looked at the silver-haired boy with some guilt. This time, I wanted him to feel the atmosphere here in advance and prepare for the future, but I didn't expect to involve him. But when she looked over, she was slightly stunned, because the boy's black eyes were still as calm as a well, as if he was not affected at all, but more importantly, he was leaving his position. Your Holiness is still young, it is normal for him to make mistakes, ha 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 ha, please give her more opportunities. Guangling Douluo couldn't suppress the corners of his mouth that were raised. If the atmosphere was not inappropriate, he really wanted to laugh out loud. Now, you stinky woman, you have come to this day, ha 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 ha. Listening to the accusations around her that she could not refute, Guangling Douluo felt happy in her heart. Ahem, but don't go too far, just let her be honest and obedient. Thinking of this, Guangling Douluo coughed dryly, and when he was about to come out to be a good person, a clear young man's voice suddenly rang in everyone's ears. Everyone, can you listen to me for a few words? The hall was silent. Everyone subconsciously looked back, but found that the silver-haired boy was already standing in the center of the hall, looking at them with a smile on his handsome face. Although it's not necessary, I'll still explain it briefly for His Holiness the Pope and me. Chapter 55. Please ask Su Chen to be my spirit hall holy son. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Mr. Yin, what's wrong? Could it be that it's not even as good as the top 10 core competitiveness of Wuhuan? Light Ling Douluo crossed his arms and said, he didn't believe that Su Chen could produce any theoretical research. This thing was not something that was born with talent. It required a lot of time, systematic study and even experience to accumulate, and it was something that could only be achieved through trial and error. You are only 6 years old and you have some fart knowledge. Unless you studied this in your last life, you still think about it in this life. Thinking of something funny, he couldn't help but glance at Su Chen and said with a smile, Mr. Yin, just say it. I think we can only bear it on our first day, ha ha ha. Don't make any noise, shut up. An angry shout resounded through the hall, and it was the old man known as Mr. Yin. He waved his hand impatiently and continued to look at the paper in his hand with great concentration, muttering something in his mouth. Light Ling Douluo's laughter stopped suddenly, and his handsome face suddenly became distorted. "Damn it, old guy, if you weren't familiar with the old pope, I would have killed you." Mr. Yin's sudden anger caused an uproar in the hall, but the next moment, they realized something, their expressions changed, and they looked at the stack of papers with some surprise and Su Chen, who had remained calm so far, etc. "There can't really be anything, right?" Douluo clenched his fists even more at this moment, trembling slightly with excitement. Bibi Dong looked calm on the outside, but in fact he also nervously grasped the papal scepter, and Guang Ling's expression also became gloomy. He looked at the two soul bones and suddenly had an ominous premonition in his heart. For a moment, the only sound left in the grand hall was the sound of turning pages. All eyes were focused on the old man's hands. Crash dash. Yin Lao flipped faster and faster, and the expression on his face became more and more complex. Hesitation, shock, disbelief, and emotion were all flashing on his face, making everyone's hearts beat. For the first time in so many years, they saw such rich expressions on this old man's face. Finally, with much anticipation, the old man finished reading all the pages and let out a long sigh of relief. "How about it? Does it have the level of the top 10 core competitiveness of Wuhuan?" That if it really had the level of Wuhuan's top 10 core competitiveness, this matter could barely be overcome. After all, Su Chen was only 6 years old, and it was an exaggeration for a 6-year-old to have such a level. As for what I said before, I definitely can't do it. It's normal for children to talk arrogantly, but if it was just a random fabrication, even a god like Su Chen wouldn't be able to save her. But in the eyes of everyone, Mr. Yin shook his head. "What, this?" The impatient old man opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but he could only sigh and gave Bibi Dong a helpless expression. "Try your best, this kid is not even at this level and still so crazy, then no one can save him." Others also shook their heads in disappointment. "I thought there was some big job, this is it? Then why do you have so many expressions?" "Ha ha ha ha, I'll just say it." Compared to the disappointment of others, Light Ling Douluo felt a big stone dropped in his heart and laughed heartily. "About this? Why are you so anxious? I haven't finished speaking yet." Mr. Yin rolled his eyes, ignoring the stiff and ugly Light Ling Douluo. He took a deep breath, looked at the paper in his hand with his old eyes full of passion, and raised it piously. "The 10 core competitivenesses of Wuhuan are not worthy of carrying its shoes. I think this is the foundation of our Wuhuan Palace's inheritance for hundreds, thousands, and 10,000 years. With it, Wuhuan Palace will be able to dominate the mainland in the next 10 or 20 years with its strength." The old man's hands trembled with excitement, and he knelt on the ground, looking at Bibi Dong with burning eyes. "Your Majesty, I propose that Su Chen be crowned the holy son of my spirit hall." "What?" Mr. Yin's sudden enthusiasm startled everyone, and they looked at the old man kneeling on the ground in great shock. "Do you know what you're talking about? Can something made by a 6-year-old child be the foundation of my Wuhuan Palace for 10,000 years, and even dominate the continent in 20 years? Do you want to make Su Chen a holy son?" If this person wasn't Mr. Yin, they would definitely think he was a lunatic. No, even if he is Mr. Yin, he still looks like a complete madman now. "You get up first." Even Bibi Dong was shocked by this sudden turn of events, but in an instant, her strong psychological quality made her realize that this must be the little guy who had researched something extraordinary. "Sure enough, only you will never let me down." The heart of the Pope's head was beating fast, and he was so excited that he could hardly control himself. She forced herself to calm down, tapped her scepter, and a gentle soul force helped Mr. Yin up. "Speak slowly, don't be in a hurry." The latter stood up, glanced around at the people with dull faces, and snorted coldly. "I know, you all think I'm crazy now, right? Third child, fourth child, you guys should come over and have a look. You'll know after reading it." He waved, but there was no movement. "The third and fourth child." Mr. Yin frowned and shouted angrily. The two old men just woke up from a dream. They swallowed and looked at each other. They quickly stepped forward and took the paper from Mr. Yin's hand tremblingly. After a moment, the two of them were breathing rapidly, their faces turned red, and they waved their hands in excitement. This is simply. God bless my Wuhuan Palace. The foundation of all ages, the foundation of all ages. Holy Sun, it must be Holy Sun. If Su Chen doesn't become Holy Sun, I will be the first to refuse. The two of them were yelling like crazy, and their rapid breathing made them choke and cough, making people wonder if they would faint in the next moment. Is this such an exaggeration? What exactly is that? Everyone focused their attention on the stack of papers, feeling their mouths were dry and their throats were itchy. It can barely be explained that Mr. Yin is not mentally healthy alone, but it is really impossible for the three of them to be together. Let me take a look too. Finally, someone couldn't help but hurried forward and quickly glanced at the scene before his eyes widened. This. Hiss. Several senior executives rushed forward with itchiness and began to shout and scream. Then they looked at Su Chen as if they were looking at a monster. No, monster is no longer enough to describe it. The Holy Sun descended from heaven. This is definitely the Holy Sun descended from heaven. That's right, otherwise how could something like this be born? That more and more people came closer, and they all began to become a little crazy. Until a die-hard supporter of Light Ling Douluo approached and his expression began to change wildly. Light Ling Douluo finally couldn't bear it anymore. Show me, that he could no longer suppress his restless heart, his soul power surged, and he reached out to get it, but unexpectedly, several figures blocked him in front. What do you mean? Guang Ling's face was cold, and he squinted his eyes and looked at the old man blocking him, especially the one at the head, Mr. Yin. I'm sorry, Your Excellency Guang Ling, this is the origin of my Wuhuan Palace's eternal foundation. You have a history of attacking the Holy Sun. It's better for you to stay away from this thing. The old man showed no fear on his face and took a step forward without hesitation. He pushed his skinny chest forward and had the attitude of killing me if you can. You. Guangling Douluo was so angry that he almost spurted blood. He pointed at Su Chen angrily. He is not the Holy Sun yet. And how do I know if you are united? But before he finished speaking, he felt that he had made a mistake. If Bibi Dong had the ability to get all these people to act with her, would there still be a chance for him to appear? Show me, I promise not to do anything. He gritted his teeth and explained patiently. Don't worry, I'm not that stupid. Besides, even if I destroy it, won't that kid still be able to write it? Oh well. Mr. Yin took a step back, thought for a moment, and it seemed to make sense. He hesitantly handed the paper in his hand to him. Be careful, don't break it. Me. Grass. Light Ling Douluo almost spit out a mouthful of blood. He suppressed the murderous intention in his heart, closed his eyes, nodded, and took the paper. At this moment, he only felt extremely humiliated. As a worshipper of Wuhuan Palace, when has he ever been so doubted and humiliated? But for the sake of what he had in hand, he endured it. I want to see you. Guang Ling squinted his eyes, glanced up and down, and was stunned. At this moment, he felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave, and his thinking was stiff for a moment. As a veteran titled Douluo, Guang Ling could tell at a glance that this was an extremely complete cultivation method. Moreover, it is the kind that dwarfs the efficiency of Wuhuan Palace's existing cultivation methods. Chapter 56 Su Chen's cultivation method is the foundation of the Spirit Hall for thousands of years. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Big drops of cold sweat slid down Guangling Douluo's forehead. He swallowed a mouthful of saliva and turned the pages tremblingly. The foundation of 10,000 years, subverting the Spirit Hall. Impossible, impossible, this is all nonsense, nonsense. Guangling Douluo kept muttering, his one eye was filled with bloodshot, and he looked over and over again. His movements became faster and more violent, and there were faint wet marks on the back of his grey robe. Seeing this, Yin Lao frowned and looked at the paper with distress. Impossible. But no matter how you look at it, no matter how you calculate it, this is a complete cultivation method that cannot be found in any faults, and the author has also made a lot of annotations thoughtfully. Even a newcomer can quickly learn it in a short time. Get started and achieve perfect results within half a year at most. Impossible. He estimated the improvement, but got a number that almost made him dizzy. Even if you have just started, you can increase your cultivation speed by more than 10% by practicing the cultivation method for 3 days. And if you perfectly master this cultivation method, you can increase your cultivation speed by at least 30%. The most terrifying thing is that this cultivation speed is not only for low level, but also for titled Douluo. It may vary from person to person, but the result will not be too different. Impossible! Guangling roared and threw the paper into the sky. The soul power in his hand surged and was about to blow it up, but at the same time, several huge soul powers came out together and blocked it abruptly. Buzz. In the hall, the gorgeous soul rings were colorful, and several people blocked the stack of papers and Su Chen with great momentum, looking at the panting Guangling Douluo vigilantly. Guangling worship, don't make a mistake. A cold and sharp shout came from high above, and Bibi Dong had already released her soul rings. 9 soul rings neatly covered her figure, and the last scarlet halo exuded a frightening aura. Someone come. Control him. A huge spider phantom emerged behind her, with several compound eyes staring at Guangling Douluo, and the breath of death slowly emerged. The Pope waved his scepter, and Ju Douluo, who had been unable to hold back for a long time, screamed and released the Chirong Tong Tian chrysanthemum, and rushed up in a hurry. The people around looked at each other, gritted their teeth and followed, surrounding Guangling worship in the center. With this practice method, Su Chen and even Bibi Dong's position is almost impossible to shake. Even if the great worshipper and the worship hall want to remove the Pope, they have to think about it, but is this possible? An excellent Pope and the youngest title Douluo, a genius who can be said to be unparalleled in the world, and a worshipper, who is it necessary to say which one to choose? Looking at the Guangling Douluo who was suppressed by several soul powers and roared wildly, only one sentence echoed in everyone's heart: Guangling Douluo is finished. Not only that, before Su Chen and Bibi Dong betrayed the spirit hall, the battle between the new pope and the six-winged angel lineage could also be temporarily ended. No one is willing to give up the opportunity to become stronger, and no one is willing to offend someone who can make you stronger, especially this opportunity to become stronger has almost no threshold and will benefit you for life. This is the general trend, and even the great priest cannot reverse it. It's going to change. Seeing Guangling Douluo being tied up by the law enforcement team, the eyes of the senior officials were shocked. Although the Spirit Hall is the largest soul master organization on the continent, it does not recruit all lone soul masters. But once the Spirit Hall announces this practice method, those lone soul masters will definitely consider the Spirit Hall first. Especially those soul douluos and title douluos who have been stuck in the bottleneck period for many years and have been unable to break through. I'm afraid they will go crazy. There is no doubt that this practice method is a historic creation that can bring great shock and change to the Spirit Hall. Impossible, they are all liars. How can he, a 6-year-old child, create such a thing? You fools, idiots, can be deceived like this. Woo woo woo. Guangling Douluo was still howling until the captain of the law enforcement team in charge of the escort shook his head helplessly and blocked his mouth. You are already like this, and you still offend people. But why is it this kid again? The law enforcement team looked curiously at the silver-haired boy who was protected in the middle of the crowd. He remembered that the last time he took Guangling away, it was because of him. Who is this kid? He could actually mess with this worshipper twice in a row. Please wait a moment. The law enforcement team leader was thinking about this question, and the boy spoke out, Huh? What is this for? I still have to thank Guangling worshipper. Su Chen shook the 2 gorgeous crystals in his hand, and the smile on his face was extremely sincere. Although we may not have the opportunity to see each other again in the future, I will always remember you. You are a good person. Captain of the law enforcement team, everyone, what is this? Killing people, and destroying their hearts. They looked at the young man and Guangling, who was twisting wildly after a short stagnation, with some pain in their teeth, and suddenly felt that the latter was a little pitiful. Before Su Chen came, Guangling Douluo's status in the hall was basically comparable to that of the Pope, and he could use all kinds of tough methods to snatch Bibi Dong's right to speak, but after the silver-haired boy came, everything changed. Both contacts ended in complete failure, and the end was more miserable. Then the last, on the other hand, Su Chen's status has risen a lot, and he has taken 3 soul bones alone. this is a bit too miserable. Of course, no one would really pity Guangling. Right now, there are more important things in front of them. Ahem, Elder Een, that cultivation method. Everyone came forward, staring at the stack of papers tightly held in Elder Yin's hand, wishing they could stretch their necks directly to the papers. No, Elder Een shook his head, holding the stack of papers tightly in his arms, and wrapped it with soul power. He turned his head and looked at Bibi Dong. Your Holiness, I beg you to completely seal the cultivation method. Who can practice and who is qualified to practice, we need to discuss before deciding. Fuck you, you old man are so bad, you want to overturn the pot after you eat it yourself? The other senior executives stared at Elder Een with ugly faces, rubbing their hands and preparing to start arguing. In addition, Elder Een glanced at everyone, his eyes sharp. I request the spiritual soul master to erase my memory and the memory of others who have read the content. Fuck, you are so cruel. Everyone retreated in anger. The feeling of erasing the memory of a spiritual master is quite painful. If you are not careful, you may hurt your brain. It is not an exaggeration to say that it is a kind of torture. What else can you say when others are like this? Mr. Een, there is no need to do this, right? Bibi Dong frowned. In my opinion, even if you have to discuss it, you are absolutely qualified to use the practice method. No, Your Holiness the Pope. Mr. Een shook his head and said seriously, you underestimate the impact of this practice method on the Spirit Hall, no, the entire continent. Low threshold, easy to get started, which means that confidentiality is extremely difficult to do. If the Spirit Hall leaks the practice method when it fails to seize the initiative, it will not lead to dominance but destruction. Okay, then do as you say. After a moment of silence, Bibi Dong nodded. She also realized the seriousness of the matter. Then, let's work overtime tonight and set a rule for this matter first. His Holiness the Pope turned around and sat down, and everyone stood in an orderly manner, waiting for her to give orders. In her eyes, there was no longer the suspicion and disdain of the past, but instead, it was filled with expectation and urgency. Bibi Dong was stunned. This kind of scene of obedience has never appeared since Bibi Dong ascended the throne. It was as if she waved her hand and someone executed it without thinking, without rejection, without argument, and without the oppression of the six-winged angels. Bibi Dong suddenly felt relaxed, and the urgency and oppression from the soul disappeared for the most part. It was as if today, she truly became the Pope who holds power. This feeling, the beautiful face of the Pope was flushed with a moving blush, his breathing was rapid, and the scorching temperature in his wine-red eyes almost swallowed the silver-haired boy in the distance. Calm down. Calm down. She forcibly suppressed the surging emotions in her heart, raised the scepter, and faced everyone. Then. Let's start. Chapter 57. The Great Priest is in trouble. The fifth priest has been taken away by the law enforceme. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Tonight, the Pope's palace is brightly lit, and the surrounding area for dozens of miles has been cleared under mandatory martial law. The fluctuations in soul power and mental fluctuations cover it like a filter, and not a single fly can fly out. But Su Chen, the culprit who caused all this, was protected by 3 titled Douluo in the center and left the Pope's palace early. The moon and stars are sparse, and the night wind is strong. The silver-haired boy was surrounded by 3 people and walked along the stone path towards the Pope's garden. I said, it doesn't have to be like this, right? Seeing the 3 people walking behind each other, Su Chen couldn't help but laugh. This road is only a few hundred meters away, and it's still behind the Pope's palace. The effect of the practice method is a bit unexpected, but it is good. It can be regarded as clearing some obstacles in advance. At least there will be no messy disputes in the future. It's just that it's a little too good. When Su Chen proposed that he wanted to go back to sleep, Mr. Een insisted on the 3 titled Douluo escorting him personally. What was outrageous was that no one objected, not to mention Bibi Dong. If she hadn't been unable to live without it, she would have given it to her personally. Your Highness the Holy Sun, you must understand the importance of you now. The middle-aged man with a Chinese character face shook his head seriously. He is Snake Spear Douluo. Yes, Your Highness the Holy Sun, you'd better be more careful. The red-haired middle-aged man also nodded. He is Guillotine Douluo, then, both of them looked at the third person who didn't speak. I think it should be nothing. Okay, you are right. Douluo scratched his head, met the serious eyes of his two colleagues, was defeated, and agreed. I'm not the Holy Sun yet, and it's really not that exaggerated. The silver-haired boy spread his hands helplessly. This is recognized by everyone. I don't think there will be a second Holy Sun in Wuhuan Palace, and there won't be anyone like you. Snake Spear Douluo shook his head, and a flattering smile suddenly appeared on his serious face. Well, His Highness the Holy Sun, can you do that cultivation method? Yes, I agree very much. That Holy Sun, I also practice the law. Galway Douluo swallowed his saliva and watched eagerly. No, what about you? Ju Douluo looked in disbelief at the flattering expressions of his two usually stern colleagues, and gritted his teeth angrily. What should I do after you finish making your facial expressions? Ahem, Holy Sun, given our relationship, I must have a copy of that cultivation method. He coughed dryly and came over. Su Chen, being watched affectionately by two big men and a she-male, he felt like goosebumps were about to appear all over his body. Taking 2 steps back with some disgust, looking at their pitiful eyes, the young man thought a little in his heart. In the original work, both Agatha and Snake Spear Douluo were people who fought for the Spirit Empire until the last moment. So there was no problem with their loyalty, and there was no problem with giving them cultivation methods. However, this move has some suspicions about winning over people's hearts. Today, Bibi Dong has taken over the power, so it's hard to say whether Bibi Dong's character has changed. The young man's dark eyes flashed, he pondered for a moment, and then smiled. Of course there is no problem, but the original manuscript of the cultivation method is with Elder Yin, and it is not clear to explain orally. I will rewrite it tomorrow and give it to Elder Ju. You can ask him for it. Okay. Thank you, Your Majesty the Holy Sun. Ray Douluo and Snake Spear Douluo nodded ecstatically, their postures becoming more and more respectful. Only Ju Douluo seemed to realize something and glanced at the young man with some gratitude. This kid is really thoughtful. Yu Guan was almost moved to tears. At this moment, his idea of loyalty to Su Chen became much firmer. Okay, I'm here, you can go back. While he was talking, the Pope's garden had arrived. Smelling the familiar aroma, Su Chen felt inexplicably relaxed. He smiled and waved, and the three of them left after thanking them profusely. Returning to the rest area of the laboratory, the young man soaked his whole body in the hot spring and closed his eyes in comfort. The harvest of this day can be said to be very huge. Counting Qian Renxue's piece, he acquired 3 soul bones, and his relationship with Qian Renxue deepened. Bibi Dong's obstacles in the Wuhuan Hall were basically cleared, and his position also improved. Wuhuan Palace basically has no problems in the short term. With the cultivation method as a big killer, even Qian Daolu won't do anything to him. For the sake of the strength of Wuhuan Palace, this person can be forgiven for killing his son, let alone a sacrifice. Next, in addition to continuing the research on natural energy, external layout will also begin. There is also the Star Dough Forest. Within 5 years, he must go back again. Su Chen looked at Tianmeng Bingshu, who was sleeping soundly in the spiritual world, and thought in his mind, all in all, there is still a lot to do. The young man thought this and slowly fell into sleep. Under the moonlight night, behind the majestic Pope's palace, in front of a smaller hall, Qian Renxue looked at the 3 golden words Palace of the Elders with hesitation written all over her delicate and pretty face, but after a moment, the blonde girl finally walked in with some hesitation. Compared with the splendor of the papal palace, this hall is not only much smaller, but also much simpler. It is not so much a palace as a very large conference room. Snap, snap, in the empty hall, only the gentle footsteps of the girl echoed. Although the light was dim, the girl seemed to have been here many times before, bypassing the huge conference table that occupied 1/3 of the hall and arriving at the back, in front of a towering statue of a seraph. The 6 wings are stretched out, the outline is slim, the hands are folded on the chest, the face is beautiful, and there is a sacred feeling of compassion. Qian Renxue stopped in front of the statue and stared intently at the seraph, which exuded a sacred aura all the time. A rare trace of confusion flashed through her beautiful golden eyes. What's wrong, Xueer? That the old voice contained a kind smile, breaking the girl out of a certain emotion. Only then did she withdraw her gaze and look at the old man who appeared under the statue at some point and looked at her with a smile. The old man was wearing a simple white robe, with white beard and hair, a vicissitudes of life face, and a kind smile. He looks like an old man next door. Grandpa, I. The girl hesitated and spoke with difficulty. Did she really kill my father? Is there any misunderstanding, or? Snort. Before Qian Renxue could finish speaking, the old man snorted coldly, and a terrifying aura erupted out of thin air. At this moment, all the objects in the hall trembled, as if the world was also afraid of him at this moment. It wasn't until the blonde girl was almost suffocated by the stagnant air that the ubiquitous violent power slowly dissipated. Hoo. Qian Renshue's pretty face was pale and shaky, panting desperately, but she still stubbornly stood there and looked directly at the old man, refusing to lower her head. Seeing the girl's miserable appearance, a trace of unbearability flashed in the eyes of the old man in white robes, but he still said coldly. Xueer, don't have sympathy for that woman. She is just an emotionless lunatic. She does everything for her own interests and goals. If it weren't for Wuhuan Palace, I would have asked her to go down there to accompany your father. The voice was as sharp as thunder, piercing into Qian Renshue's mind, a madman without emotions, doing everything for his own interests and goals. The girl bit her lip, but her mind recalled the bright smile she saw that day, and the nervous expression on her face when she proposed to fight Su Chen last night. If she had never seen this, she would always think so. Although I have never owned those, it is undeniable that they are real. If you can't explain the current situation, it only proves that you don't know enough. The silver-haired boy's words flashed through his mind. The girl's eyes were lowered. At this moment, she had a little doubt about her grandpa, whom she trusted so much for the first time. Big offering, it's not good. Just when Qian Renxue was thinking about how to ask, a panicked voice suddenly came from outside the door, and then, a person ran in out of breath, with a look of panic on his face. 5 offerings were taken away by the law enforcement team again. Chapter 58. This child will definitely become Xueer's greatest help. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The blonde girl's thoughts were broken by the sudden voice. She raised her head curiously and looked at the middle-aged man who came to report 5 offerings. She had an impression that the first time she was arrested was because of Su Chen. It was then that I started to become curious and competitive about him. What does it mean to be captured again? Shut up, what are you looking like? Qian Daolu raised his eyelids and snorted coldly. The visitor was so frightened that he became silent for a moment and could not say a word. The great worshipper didn't look at him, but looked at Qian Renxue, his old eyes restored to that kind look. Xueer, you must be exhausted. Go back and rest first. You have to think carefully about what Grandpa said tonight. Although the face was still familiar to Qian Renxue, the girl still felt that there were slight cracks in the warmth of the past. Qian Renxue did not doubt her grandfather's kindness to her, but she needed the truth that she had longed for a long time. The girl bit her lip tightly, lowered her head and nodded silently. She knew that she might not get anything useful from her grandfather. Why not ask him what he can do? The appearance of the silver-haired boy appeared in Qian Renshue's mind. Even though the other party is young, he sees things like this much more clearly than he does. She's really not very good at thinking about this stuff. Tell me, what happened to that loser? Seeing Qian Renxue leaving, the kindness on the great priest's face suddenly disappeared and turned back to his indifferent look. He turned his back to the visitor and said calmly. It's Su Chen, him. The middle-aged man swallowed and recalled the scene in the Pope's palace, with a look of disbelief in his eyes. The blonde girl stopped, her keen hearing allowed her to hear familiar names. Did that guy cause trouble again? Qian Renxue hesitated for a moment, then quietly walked back, listening quietly. That kid? He's really restless. Qian Daolu frowned slightly. He also knew something about Su Chen, an emerging genius. After all, the #1 soul ring in 1,000 years and the amazing fighting ability can be regarded as unique even among the geniuses of several generations in Wuhuan Hall. But that's just some understanding. As the pinnacle of the Douluo Continent and the human agent of the gods, Things like the first ring of the millennium did not attract much attention from him, since Bibi Dong was a woman who seemed to have picked up a treasure and attached great importance to her. Qian Daolu was also happy to have an additional handle to restrain her, and he also sent Guang Ling back. It was just a warning to her, to be honest. As for whether Su Chen would follow Bibi Dong wholeheartedly, Qian Daolu never minded this. No one can escape his grasp. Quan should let that woman train the next generation for Wuhuan Palace. Unexpectedly, as soon as Guangling was asked to go back today, something would happen again. Guangling is also a waste, and can be broken twice in the hands of a 6-year-old child. It seems that we have to consider whether to retain his enshrined position. No, His Highness, that boy, he has developed a cultivation method that can increase the cultivation speed of soul masters of all levels by 30%. The middle-aged man swallowed and said tremblingly, "What?" Xianren Xueer, who was listening quietly, suddenly opened her beautiful eyes. The cultivation speed of soul masters of all levels increased by 30%. Can these three really be connected? Also, Su Chen actually studies this. Do you know what you're talking about? Qian Daolu frowned and stared at the person in front of him. The 30% increase in cultivation speed also includes all levels of soul masters, soul Douluo, and titled Douluo. Do you think this is possible? Facing those Ryuan eyes, the middle-aged man was so frightened that he swallowed his saliva. First he shook his head desperately, then nodded desperately, and tremblingly took out a stack of paper. This is the share that was given to the enshrinement hall after discussion. I have brought it back. You will know it at a glance. The latter's brows furrowed even more tightly, and as a result, his pupils shrank instantly when he scanned the stack of papers. It's true. With his strength, he could see the innovation and horror of this cultivation method at a glance. Okay. Qian Daoliu's brows instantly relaxed. He laughed a few times, and patted the middle-aged man on the shoulder. Okay, this is simply the blessing of an angel. Even though it was his nature, he felt a little uncontrollable joy at the moment. Just like what Mr. Yin said, Qian Daolu also saw from this technique the possibility of Wuhuan Palace's dominance, and even its foundation for eternity. As long as this cultivation method is firmly held in Wuhuan Hall, then all the talents in the world will be in the hands of Wuhuan Hall. This kid is really a treasure. At this moment, Qian Daolu understood why Bibi Dong valued Su Chen so much. But it's a pity that he doesn't have angel blood. The great worshipper shook his head and said with some regret, since there is no seraph's martial spirit, there is no chance to win the favor of the angel god. Even if he excels, the position he can reach in the end is at most the same as himself. However, this person can be regarded as a good helper for Xueer in the future. He must completely focus on Xueer. Looking at the blonde girl eavesdropping at the door, a glint flashed in Qian Daoliu's eyes. Qianren Xueer had no idea that her grandfather had already plotted against her. Her mind is full of that cultivation method now. No. 30% increase in cultivation speed. If this is true, then she wants it too. The blonde girl's beautiful eyes sparkled with light. If it wasn't too late, she would have rushed to Su Chen right now and asked him clearly, what on earth does Su Chen not know? Qianren Xueer walked out of the Douluo Hall happily, thinking about what excuse she should use to find Su Chen tomorrow to exchange for a cultivation method. How many times have I helped him? It seems that he is even stronger than me. Why not give him a few more soul bones? Forget it, I guess he doesn't need soul bones now, the girl thought distressedly, and her figure gradually disappeared into the night. Tick 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 dash, the warm water drops fell on the forehead of the silver-haired boy, and his eyelids moved and slowly opened. Am I asleep? His black eyes blinked in confusion. When the familiar decoration style around him came into view, he realized that he was still in the hot spring, a day of training, fighting at night, and fighting in the Pope's palace. He was concentrating for more than 10 hours. Once he relaxed, he fell asleep uncontrollably. The energy and physical strength of a 6-year-old body are still a little weak. Su Chen looked at his hands, shook off the water droplets, shook his head, grabbed the towel next to him and prepared to come out. Wait, little guy. A familiar cold voice came from the side, causing Su Chen's hand to stop grabbing the towel. Wait, Bibi Dong, why is she here? The silver-haired boy was stunned subconsciously, but before Su Chen could figure out the problem, he widened his eyes instantly, Walala. In the gurgling sound of water and the diffuse mist, a beautiful figure walked out of the hot spring pool next to him. Chapter 59 Bibi Dong's Honesty, Is There Something Else Going On? You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Pope who was walking towards me lazily stretched out his almost perfect body under his crown. His snow-white and reflective skin was looming in the water vapor. The water droplets flowed down the graceful curves. There was nothing that should be seen or should not be seen. The reserve was displayed in front of Su Chen. What's wrong? Little one. In her beautiful burgundy eyes, she looked at Su Chen who was stiff all over with great interest. Are you shy? The silver-haired boy's brain was a little blank. This was the first time in his 3 lives that he had seen such a scene of violent blood, let alone a top-level beauty like Bibi Dong in the mainland. His mouth moved a little dryly, he closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and stretched out his hand to form a seal. Smoke rose and the boy's figure disappeared. Really? I'm not shy. Why are you shy? You're a 6-year-old kid. The Pope leaned lazily on the edge of the hot spring, his jade arms stretched horizontally, and his long pink hair falling like a waterfall, blocking some of the spring sunshine. With a gentle smile on her face, she looked at the boy's back, but there was a hint of imperceptible tension and pain in her wine-red eyes. The young man who returned to the room naturally heard these words and smiled helplessly. It would be fine if he was really a 6-year-old child, but the body in question is the soul of an adult. Okay, don't be angry. As if aware of the boy's unhappiness, Bibi Dong had already put on her usual white one-piece nightgown when she came in again. Even though the delicate collarbones, large areas of white skin, and long, straight legs are still exposed, compared with the previous ones, this can only be regarded as childish. So, is there something wrong with your Majesty the Pope coming to see me so late? Taking a few deep breaths of the slightly fragrant air, the young man calmed down a little and returned to his calm demeanor. His dark eyes looked directly at the beautiful woman in front of him. Sometimes I really wonder if you are really only 6 years old. Bibi Dong sat opposite Su Chen, her beautiful legs crossed, her burgundy eyes blinking, her long eyelashes trembling slightly, with a little curiosity and wonder. Why are you so calm after taking out that kind of thing? Do you know that tonight, the Pope's palace was so noisy that several old men over 90 years old almost started fighting on the spot? As if thinking of the scene at that time, her beautiful eyes curved into crescent moons, and she covered her lips and smiled softly. So, maybe you're an old monster pretending to be like this, right? Bibi Dong was minding her own business as she came closer and looked at the boy. The two were so close that they could almost smell each other's breath. Su Chen smelled the sweet smell and a faint smell of alcohol. He took a step back calmly. Your Majesty, have you drank? Bibi Dong ignored the young man's words, but reached out and pinched his cheek. Forget it, there shouldn't be such a thick-skinned old monster, otherwise, you would have taken advantage of me today. She blinked her eyes and said narrowly, who are you talking about? Who is so thick-skinned? I don't want to become a child, okay? It's not all the damn system's fault, system. The system that he didn't understand was whipped to death countless times in his heart. The young man raised his head and sighed, Your Majesty, whether I am an old monster or not doesn't affect what I see. And don't you think that it's so late that you should go? Have you rested? Drunk women can be too troublesome, as Tsunade in his previous life taught him. In the middle of the night, he kept knocking on his door and said he was drunk and had nowhere to stay for the night. Who the hell are you kidding? You, Princess of Konoha, have nowhere to go. My house is full of precious experimental materials, how can I have any room for you? He used his own money to open a hotel for her and she got angry and smashed things. I really don't understand women, especially drunk women. I really didn't expect that the person who allowed me to take the initiative to bathe in a hot spring with someone else for the first time in my life was actually a 6-year-old boy, and he still disliked me so much. Bibi Dong's beautiful eyes were slightly curved, and her smile was trembling with waves. After a long time, she stopped, with tears of laughter still in the corners of her eyes. Bibi Dong wiped her eyes, the expression on her pretty face suddenly became complicated. Couldn't you have shown up earlier? The room was silent for a while, and the air was filled with some indescribable emotions. Su Chen was silent. Bibi Dong's expression seemed familiar to him for some reason. Tsunade, Uchiha Mikoto, Buhi Yugao, who else is there? It seemed that everyone had said similar words to him with regrets and emotions that he couldn't understand. It's just that I have no chance to understand it. Tonight is the happiest night I have had in decades. Thank you, Chen. Well, can I call you that? Bibi Dong's voice brought Su Chen back to reality. She simply lay down on the sofa and looked straight at the ceiling. You probably don't know, Chen, what your appearance and actions mean to me. The woman's voice sounded like she was talking in sleep. She stared at the boy, her eyes no longer filled with ambition and madness, but filled with infinite tenderness and clarity. So, I think I should confess some things to you. Su Chen was still thinking about when he agreed to call Chen such a bastard, and when he heard Bibi Dong's words, he couldn't help but feel a little confused. What does this mean? Frankly, do we have anything to confess? I am an orphan. I was adopted and raised by Wuhuan Temple since I was a child. Because of my fairly good talent, I was accepted as a disciple by the previous generation Pope Qiang Sunji and was made a saint. Without waiting for the boy to answer, she said to herself. I was very happy at that time. I practiced hard every day and hoped to be able to help the teacher soon. Until I met you Xiaojiang. Well, that's right, he's the person you look down on, Chen. But at that time, I thought he was the smartest person in the world. Even if his martial soul failed to mutate, it would not have any impact at all. Therefore, I believed whatever he said, and whatever he wanted to do, I would use my identity as a saint. Go help him. How about it? Bibi Dong looked back at the silent young man and chuckled. Do you think I'm stupid? Isn't that nonsense? Su Chen shook his head in his heart, but sighed secretly. However, if you think about it, it seems reasonable. A rich young lady would be deceived by a spirited young man, and the class beauty would prefer social workers and rappers. Such stories were common in Su Chen's first life. Is it because they are stupid? No, it's just because those things that are difficult for ordinary people to touch are just things that can be seen in their eyes. On the contrary, it is these people who they will never come into contact with in their lives, which arouse their curiosity even more. Yes, I also feel that I am stupid, so stupid that I would believe his lies and his promises. Bibi Dong's voice rose in vain, and the aura on her body became unstable, exuding a dangerous aura. Su Chen was stunned when he heard this. Is there something hidden behind this matter? Chapter 60. Everything will be yours sooner or later. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Looking at Bibi Dong, who was full of murderous intent, Su Chen was a little confused. Although Yu Xiaojiang was indeed irresponsible and cowardly, this matter should be mostly due to your love brain. Otherwise, how could you say that you want to leave the spirit hall? Yes, even when Bibi Dong almost became a madman in the finale, she didn't do anything ungrateful. How could she say that when she was young? Su Chen also realized something. Even if she was in love, Bibi Dong was 17 or 18 years old at that time and had her own thinking ability. Yu Xiaojiang's weight could not exceed that of the spirit hall, mentor, classmate, and friend who grew up with her. After a long time, Bibi Dong calmed down, and a deep hatred flashed in her wine-red eyes. At that time, we had just returned from the Sea God Island in defeat, and Yu Xiaojiang proposed the idea of marrying me at that time. It was probably the first time in her life that she encountered such a terrible defeat. She was hit hard. Therefore, facing her lover's initiative to marry her, the young girl did not think much and agreed to it with ecstasy. Nothing can be more inspiring than the eternal oath. But before I told the teacher this good news, he said that the Pope would never agree to me being with a waste who could never break through level 30. If possible, could I quit the spirit hall for him? He was willing to take me to visit all the beautiful scenery on the continent, which was something I could never see in the spirit hall. What the hell? So this was Yu Xiaojiang's initiative? Su Chen was shocked, but then again, Yu Xiaojiang's words were definitely very lethal to the inexperienced girls. Spending the world with her lover hand in hand was the dream scene of many girls. You agreed? Su Chen couldn't help asking. Obviously, reality and words are still somewhat different, even if the ending is known. I am very tempted. Bibi Dong nodded somewhat self-deprecatingly. I grew up in the spirit hall, and I also want to see what the mainland is like. If I can, of course I am willing. But that is impossible. She shook her head. I am the saint of the spirit hall. If I leave, how can I face the people who have been expecting me, the people who have helped me, and the people who blocked the soul skills for me on the Sea God Island, and the spirit hall that gave birth to me and raised me? However, his words also gave me inspiration. Although I will not really quit the spirit hall, it should be no problem to scare Qiang Sunji and make him agree to my request. That is the most regrettable decision I have made in my life. At this point, Bibi Dong's body trembled violently, her aura fluctuated, and purple and dark green soul power appeared alternately on her body, which looked extremely terrifying. My teacher, the previous Pope Qiang Sunji, raped me, saying that he wanted to keep me forever, and forced me to break up with Yu Xiaojiang, otherwise he would kill him. I had no choice but to break up with Yu Xiaojiang, but... She spoke word by word, and deep hatred emerged in Bibi Dong's eyes, and her beautiful face looked a little ferocious at the moment. Later I realized that everything was for me. The blue lightning Tyrannosaurus Rex wanted me to leave the spirit hall, but they failed. After being discovered, they were threatened by Qiang Sunji and played this drama. I had long been chosen by Qiang Sunji to be the blood carrier of the angel lineage. He just needed an excuse that was natural and would not make me suspicious. Bibi Dong's forehead was exposed with blue veins, and she said these words almost hoarsely. These are all the information I captured from his consciousness after I killed him and devoured him with my own hands. From that day on, I decided that I would destroy the spirit hall and the angel lineage. She panted and closed her eyes in pain, her long and slightly curled eyelashes trembled, and the corners of her eyes sparkled. Is that so? Su Chen was stunned. I never expected that there would be such an inside story in this matter. This can explain why the blue lightning Tyrannosaurus Rex was so miserable in the subsequent soul hunting operation. As the mother clan of Yu Xiaojiang, not only was she not spared by his men, but she was the one who died the cleanest among the three clans. In the true sense, no one was left alive. I'm afraid Yu Yuanjin could not have thought that his impulsive behavior back then would result in such a tragic consequence. I thought Yu Xiaojiang was just a pawn like me, but that day, Xiaochen, your words reminded me. He is definitely not innocent. After a long time, Bibi Dong opened her eyes again and regained her composure. If it weren't for you, maybe I would still have fantasies about that person. Of course, I don't care now. It's like an insignificant person died in the memory. If he never appears again, it's fine. Otherwise, the current spirit hall pope doesn't mind letting him taste the pain. How about it, Xiaochen, do you know what kind of person I am now? It's not the pope you think it is. I'm just a madman who only wants revenge and wants to destroy the spirit hall and the angel lineage. Knowing all this, do you still want to follow me and help me? Do you regret doing so much for me? The pope came close to him, with a beautiful smile on his pretty face, his red lips slightly parted, the smell of burning sweetness and alcohol gushing out, and his beautiful eyes stared at the young man, but in that smile, there was hidden tension and bitterness that could not be noticed, and even the body was trembling slightly. Su Chen didn't answer, he was just silent, as if thinking about something. As time went by, Bibi Dong felt that her heart was gradually shrinking, all the heat in her body was being lost, and she was becoming colder and colder. Sure enough, don't you want to? That's right, people like me will only drag everything into the abyss. It's time to give up this illusion a long time ago. Bibi Dong, you are just a destined avenger. It is your mission to declare war on the world. Everything else is redundant. Everything is. Just when her eyes were getting blurry, a hand gently rested on her shoulder. The scorching temperature made Bibi Dong instinctively look up. Since you want to sleep here, I'll go to another room. He gently pushed the stunned Bibi Dong onto the bed and pulled a quilt for her. Get some rest early, His Majesty the Pope. You have a meeting tomorrow, and I still have to train and study. The silver-haired boy yawned, waved and prepared to leave. Etc. Just when Su Chen walked to the door, Bibi Dong spoke. He turned around and met a pair of wine-red eyes soaked in tears. Mr. Yin suggested that you become the Holy Son. If I refused, would you be unhappy? The boy stopped. That he touched the back of his head and smiled. Sooner or later, isn't it? After saying that, he closed the door gently and walked out. The light in the room dimmed, but Bibi Dong was still looking at the door, dazed. After an unknown amount of time, she suddenly started laughing, and her laughter became louder and more exaggerated, until she burst into tears. She tightly grasped the quilt that had a slightly familiar smell, then took off her nightgown and wrapped it up all over her body. Yes, sooner or later it will be all yours. The Pope showed a beautiful smile under his crown and fell asleep peacefully, but no matter how you look at that smile, there is something morbid about it.